Hi everyone, this is the first video for the translation worksheet number 6, and we are still continuing on with the end of Ruth. This is Ruth 4, okay? And remember that in the preceding week, the opportunity to perform the function of elaborate redeemer was presented to the relatives, that is the closest kin of to Naomi, who was not Boaz. And when he initially says yes, and then after he says no, we are now at the point where Boaz now decides to take on that role. And really, I think I said in the last couple of videos, part of the reason maybe you have this kind of closer kin who says no, this Mr. So-and-so, is to deliberately contrast Boaz to this other guy, right? Again, as a kind of demonstration, a narrative demonstration of what Hesed looks like, okay? What Hesed looks like, therefore, is the way that Boaz acts, right? Which is to take on this function as a redeemer, despite it perhaps economically hurting him, right? And the opposite of that, the lack of Hesed, is how the other guy, Mr. Mr. So-and-so, right? That's how he acts, okay? So I'm going to continue on. So verse 9. Okay, so, and again, as before, I'm going to read it out loud. I'm going to explain things. Please fill out your worksheets as you watch the videos. Vayomer Boaz la zakanim v'kol ha'am edim atem hayom. Okay, so Vayomer, and he said, now again, we've seen this all over the place, right? So Boaz, right? Boaz said, right? La zakenim, right? Zakenim, zakan, as you see here, means the elders, or literally means to be old, right? So now he says to the elders and the v'kol ha'am, and to all of the people, at the gates, right? So this is a kind of legal proceeding, right, where he formally takes on the role of kinsman redeemer. As I said in the last video, you can tell by the description here that some of the memory of how levirate marriage actually works by the time of Ruth is a little bit fuzzy, okay? So Boaz said to the elders and to all the people, Edim atem hayom. Okay, Edim, I'll talk about that important term in a bit. Edim, witnesses, right? And testimony, witnesses you are today. Okay. Now, I have, and this important word, witnesses, it will come up again. Okay, and one of the questions I ask you is, why the repetition of this word? Okay, because of course it seems to be important, as you can tell by the repetition. Okay, so I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so he says, you are now witnesses today. Okay, ki kaniti et kol asher la Elimelech. Let's stop there. That I have purchased or acquired. I think I talked about this in the last videos, but I don't remember. This is the same word that underlies the name of Cain, as in Cain and Abel, and it means to, has a variety of meanings, but it means to buy, acquire, purchase. It has a kind of economic, functionality to it. And of course, like I said, it's clear that by the time of Ruth, that levirate marriage has become something kind of bit fuzzy, right? Because it doesn't seem to really be levirate marriage about purchasing stuff so much as doing a function that is helpful to the welfare, the well-being of the widow, as well as to the man that has died. Okay, so there may be a little bit of confusion with this acquire by language. Okay. It could be, however, that with the term kaniti, what they're kind of emphasizing, or the writer is emphasizing, is the fact that, whatever they may remember about levirate marriage, certainly they understand that the purpose of levirate marriage is for the economic well-being of especially the widow, okay, and that family. So what they've gotten right is that they're using an economically kind of loaded word. Okay, so whatever. Okay, so you are witnesses today that I have acquired or purchased or bought, whatever, okay, all that is to Elimelech, okay, and all that is, oh, did I read that? I can't remember. So all that is to Elimelech, okay, va'et kol asher la Kilion u Mahalon, and all that is to Kilian and Mahalon, right, mi yad Naomi, from the hand yad of Naomi. Okay, so and by this point, it's clear that there's no understanding of levirate marriage, okay? Because levirate marriage really is supposed to, if you, at least if you read about it in Deuteronomy, has to do with brothers of the same family. But notice how complicated levirate marriage, or how complicated the misunderstanding of levirate marriage is by this point, right? So he's taking on everything that belongs to Elimelech, Kilion, his son, and Mahalon, his other son, and from Naomi. Naomi doesn't really have a right to sell it, right? So, and what does that have to do with Ruth, right? Again, a little bit fuzzy. Okay, the memory seems to be of some kind of old ancient institution that was for the well-being of the widow, that demonstrated the hesed, right, of Yahweh. Exactly how it works, who knows? Okay, so that seems to be sort of what's going on here. Okay, and you can tell, because of course verse 10 goes on telling you, further hinting that the writer has no real understanding about exactly how levirate marriage was supposed to function. V'gam et Ruth ha Moavia eshet Machalon kaniti li la'isha. Okay, and also, by the way, Ruth the Moabitess, wife of Mahalon, I also, I acquire kaniti, again, this repetition of kaniti, kaniti, kaniti. I acquire for myself to wife, okay? Or, I mean, you have to make your translation prettier, right? I also acquire to become my wife, right? Wife in that kind of levirate marriage sense, right? Of course, we are never told. Now, Ruth is not complete, like all texts, right? We only have what the text says, right? It seems to be the case that that Boaz only, that sun is making this weird line across my head. Hold on for 1 second. Okay, so the sun is fixed. Okay. What was I saying? It's certainly it's odd that Ruth would figure in at all to levirate marriage, considering that she is the wife of one of the sons of the dead man. Whatever. Okay, so it's still quite confused. Okay, so I have acquired for myself to wife. Okay, so, and also Ruth the Moabitess, wife of Mahalon, I will acquire for myself as a wife. Okay. Oh, right, I remember what I was saying. It doesn't seem to be the case, at least from what we have in the text, which is limited, of course. It's that Ruth and Boaz had a traditional marriage. So this is, really what he's saying is, I'm going to only acquire her as a wife, as a kind of levirate marriage kind of wifey, okay, or marrying. Okay, and what I mean by that is, of course, it's likely the case that Boaz had another wife, right, or had many other wives, considering he was a rich man. Also, we are never told of any other children by them except for this special child, right, that is the result of this marriage, right? As if, right, Boaz only kind of performed his duty as he ought to, of being a redeemer, and then went back to his kind of normal life. Okay. So by wife here, probably what is meant as a wife insofar as levirate marriage. Okay, and then la hakim shem hametim al nahalo, in order to cause to raise up. Notice the H here. This is a hifil, right? Has a inseparable preposition. So this is an infinitive construct, hifil, from kof, vav, mem, and you've seen this before, right? These kind of these hollow verbs, or second vav, second yod verbs are tricky, but kum, you'll see so many times that hopefully by this point you have come to recognize them, right? So this is a hifil. Hifils are causative. In order to raise up, or cause to go up, right? Kum means to rise. In order to raise up are caused to rise, shame the name Hamitim of the dead over his nahalo, over his property or inheritance. Okay, let's go back to that. Below Yikaret Shem Hametim Meim Echaviv. No, that's not right. Echav. Okay. Keeps going. Okay. And in order to not be cut off, so that, right, the name of the dead will not be cut off from with among his brothers. Okay. This, I'll explain all this in a minute. This is the E-R-A sound, the doubling in the first consonant of yikaret, right? This is all an indication that this is what? A nifal, right? Remember, nifals, the nun become absorbed into the first consonant. Nifals have this E-R-A sing-songy pattern. Remember also that nifals are passive, right? They are the passive counterpart to the call. So you got to kind of, when you translate it, put it a little bit further away or make it passive in order, in order to raise up the name of the dead over his inheritance, and also so that the name of the dead will not be cut off, right? So you're putting it further away, making it passive from among Me'im, his brothers, okay? And now it gets a little trickier. Okay, I mean, so thus far, notice again, right, what's going on in verse 10. The writer is giving you kind of like a long, slightly confused, but, generally okay, explanation of levirate marriage and the purpose of levirate marriage, right? That the purpose of levirate marriage is to help out certainly the widow, right? Naomi, who is named here, right? But in particular, or also it was to help out not just the widow, but also the man who has died, okay? Remember that I think I said in the last video, Nahalo, the land of Israel was seen as not belonging to an individual, but to Yahweh, okay? And he is, of course, lending it out, letting his people borrow chunks of it, okay? He's kind of like a king, right? Or this is like a serfdom, I guess, right? So he is lending out territory that belongs to him to loyal servants to work, okay? And what this means is that because the land does not belong to anyone but to Yahweh, and since Yahweh is deciding which families of his chosen people can live where, right? This land is not meant to be passed on to someone outside of that family grouping. Okay. And this should, this in part is why the exile is such a dramatic and horrific event, right? Because this kind of theology and certainly ideology, which is very much centered on the land, right? The land of Israel, okay? The land of Yahweh, right? This a piece of property that Yahweh controls, that Yahweh rents out to the Israelites, right? This land that should not go even outside of the family, right? What exile does is, of course, it uproots all of that, right? And erases a whole lot of that ideology, right? And so that's in part the trauma of exile. Okay, and you can tell. I do wonder whether the emphasis, this kind of reiteration of the importance of levirate marriage, not only to the widow but to the dead. Okay, especially the fact that levirate marriage, the purpose of it, as explained here, is so that the family inheritance, this land that is given to a family by Yahweh, right, that is supposed to be continually passed from father to son, right, through this Israelite chosen people lineage. I do wonder whether the emphasis here indicates, again, is a hint that this book, this text was edited in exile, right? Where this Nahala system, right, this inheritance system has been kind of decimated or certainly upended. Okay. And so they're kind of doing like, they're kind of looking backwards, to their past, right? When things were great, when David, who's coming up is about to become king, when God displayed his hesed by by giving Israelites land and by making sure that particular families continually regain the land or continue owning the land via levirate marriage. You do wonder whether, again, this is editors looking backwards, right? Hopeful, kind of looking back to a better past, but also looking forward that God will, bring the Israelites back to the land, reestablish the system, okay, redemonstrate his hesed, right, by returning to the Israelites, not only to their land, but returning to the family of Israel, the various families of Israel, the land that belongs to them. Why? So that the name of the dead, is not cut off from among his brothers. Okay, so so it could be kind of indicative of exilic editorship, okay, or maybe authorship. It's hard to know, right? It could also signify this emphasis on the levirate marriage as being a function, the purpose of which is to make sure that the name of the dead man not be cut off. You do wonder again whether this is kind of indicative of the existence of ancestral worship, right? Why is the land so important? Why is it so important that even a man who is dead still has a means by which he has a male heir? Well, aside from exile, perhaps the importance has to do with ancestral worship, right? That you continue living even if you are dead, right? Via your family or via the sons and the grandsons and so forth that remember you and that come after you. Okay, so it may also hint of the existence of ancestral worship in Israel. Okay, now what's a little weird is this part. Okay, u mi sha'ar makomo. Okay, this is a little bit of a different edition. Okay, so I'm gonna translate it from I don't know, from here, in order to raise up the name of the dead over his inheritance, and so that the name of the dead will not be cut off from among his brothers, and Misha'ar Makomo, and from the gate of his place. Okay, and that's very mysterious phrase. Gate of what place, right? What are we talking about? The gate. I mean, the most obvious translation is from the gate of the place, his house, right? Again, kind of referencing territory, referencing his household, right? Family lineage, as well as the kind of territory where his house is placed. Okay, notice also, remember that this is all taking place at the gates of the city, which is where all the elders and where judgments would take place. So, maybe it's, referencing the gates for that reason. I think there's another reason having to do with the meaning of the gates that may be the reason why you have this, because this is not really a normal part of, Misha'ar Makomo, not normally a part of levirate marriage. Like I said, however, it's a bit confused. This word Sha'ar, which is of course also the locale of where this judgment is taking place, may explain why you have this weird little phrase here. Okay, Sha'ar means gates. Okay, certainly, and the word trilateral root undergirding this word, shin, ayin, resh, right, can mean to measure. Okay, and so and remember that interestingly, measurements, right, certainly lineage and things like that, whether something continues on. Remember, there's this emphasis on how much grain, the measuring of the grain that's given as food to Ruth. So there's some emphasis on numbers, right? In part probably because measuring and numbers and things like that have to do with fertility, of course, which is a great concern here, food, of course, but also the continuation of the family, the survivability of the family, survival of the family. And of course, you have that here too, right? Because of course, the point of levirate marriage is so that, the family survives, right? The name of the dead man survives, that the widow survives, okay? So it may be a kind of reference to that. Again, there is another word that sounds awfully similar to it, which I think is kind of the real reason why you have this word, this little phrase being used here. Um, and that is shin, not ayin as here, but shin olive resh. And remember, the ayin and the olive are slightly different gutturals, right? Made in different parts of the throat, the sound. However, they are very, very similar in sound, and there's a lot of wordplay between the two. Okay, so what does shin olive resh mean? Well, it means to be left over, to remain, to survive. Charate, for example, is a word that is used to describe the remnant of the exile, right? Those who will return from exile, those who are left over from this devastation. So again, I wonder if they're using or they're word playing with the sha'ar sound, right? Sha'ar sound to again hint that this is not about necessarily what's happened in the past, but insofar as the past, enlightens the future and is deeply intertwined with the future, at least in the biblical context, it has again to do with exile, right? This whole levirate marriage is seen as, in some ways, a demonstration of Yahweh's hesed, right? Almost as a plea or a prayer, I guess, for what Yahweh should do for his people in exile. Right? Remember, I said that Ruth's family or Naomi's family really can be envisioned as a symbol of Israel in exile in general. Okay, and so, I mean, it's not surprising that, therefore, to kind of re-emphasize that this is about exile, they would use a word that sounds awfully similar to the word that is used to talk about the remnant of the exile. Okay, the exilees who are left over, who survive. Okay, and there's other wordplay also involved. Sha'ir, right? Something that sounds very similar to this word, right? Not only can mean exile or remainder. Sorry. Not only can mean remainder or remnant, but it also, by extension, has additional connotations of flesh, food, and blood relationships. Okay, so in short, it has a lot of exilic family connotations, okay, which is probably why it's used here. Okay, and again, kind of doubly emphasized here by locating the entire thing at, so not only does it mention the gates of the place, but also this takes place at the gates, okay, gates of the city. Okay, another short thing, I don't ask you about it. Makomo, why is makomo here used here? It kind of, repeats this, kum, to raise up, to raise up, to raise up. Kum here and kum here. So that's in part why it's used. It may be that this is a kind of code word. Okay, so not in this text, but certainly in the book of Esther, which is another class I'm teaching. Makomo, some have argued, is a code word used of God. Okay, that's God's kind of, a kind of allusion to God. Okay, so because Esther, the reason why is because in Esther 4, it says, the protagonist Mordecai is telling Esther to take action on behalf of the Jewish community who is in danger, and Mordecai, to kind of convince her to do something, says this one line, and he says, well, if you don't do anything, it'll be okay because help will come for the Jews from another place, Makom, okay? And a lot of interpreters say, aha, this is a code word for God, right? He's saying, even if you don't do anything, God will save us, but you need to act anyways, okay, something like that, okay? So it may be that here's another kind of wink towards God here, okay? And then I'm going to finish up. Edim atem hayom, and so it's nicely chiastically structured. It begins with Edim atem hayom. It ends with Edim atem hayom, right? Telling you this is a complete clause here, okay, complete sentence. And it ends with, and you are witnesses today, okay? So what that does do, of course, is that it repeats this adim, okay? So, why does it repeat this word adim? What does it mean? Again, like the word sha'ar, it's probably for alliterative reasons, right? The word edim, which means witnesses, right, comes from the trilateral root ayin vav dalet. Okay, and it means a whole variety of things used in a lot of places. Right? It means not only to testify, okay, or to charge, but it also means to repeat, do again, restore. To it has this kind of perpetuity language, right? Remember that in Hebrew, related to this word is the preposition ad, until, up to. Okay, so it can be used as a preposition, until eternity. Okay, and so again, it's probably purposeful that this word is repeated. This kind of perpetuity. To do again language, right? Restore language, right? Again, references exile, right? And of course, references this idea that the story of Ruth is about the revival, the restoration of this family. And of course, the family being a code or a symbol for Israel, the restoration, right, revival, a redoing almost, right, of Israel. Okay, so probably, there's a deliberate reason why this word is used. I have other information. Ayin Dalit Hey, which is a word that word plays with this, word, means household, family, congregation. Okay, so again, it seems to emphasize this kind of family, the perpetuation of the family, this idea that the perpetuation of the family really is a kind of living testimony, especially to the promises of Yahweh to his chosen people, right? And again, in emphasizing that, it re-emphasizes this theme or this hint that this is exilic, that they're referring to the exile. Okay. And with that, I will stop. This is Nifal, like I said. This is not Balkan. Notice it has a prefix. This is a Nifal imperfect third masculine singular from Kaf Resh Tav. Okay, and go on to the next video for the next couple of verses.